Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today and welcome back and happy Tuesday. I hope you had a really nice weekend as the second day of the week. And if you're joining us on the replay, a quick hello to you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in and please include in comments the word replay so I'll catch your view. I also want to welcome my friends at Modern Mom as we are also now streaming to you so that you can stay on top of relevant business, financial news, all that good stuff. But let's start and let you know how the market closed today. Now, the Dow closed up 15 points, the Nasdaq was down 67 points, and the S&P closed up 4 points. As a lot of things happening today. In fact, the Dow reversed a 360 point loss and ends the day a little bit higher after Fed Chairman Jerome Powell spoke to the U.S. Senate Banking Committee and shared that currently both U.S. inflation levels and employment levels remain well below the Federal Reserve's goals. He also said that the current monetary policy that we currently have, he would like to stay in place despite much concern over the rising bond yields, which has brought increased concerns about inflation. As you know, inflation is where things get a little bit more expensive each and every day. Now, what this also means to those of us, human talk here, the Fed likely is going to be holding interest rates currently at near zero rates. That'll probably stay the same. What that's going to mean also is that your bank interest, on your checking and savings, probably isn't going to increase much, but also could continue to put pressure on mortgage rates and hopefully keep them to be continuing to be low, so that we also saw a little bit of an increase in mortgage rates recently. But, if you're in the market to refinance your mortgage or perhaps buy a new home, hopefully rates will continue to stay low for you. And right now, that's what we're getting. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell says he plans to keep rates close to zero and keep asset purchases for the same time as well, keep them ongoing. And Fed Chairman Jerome Powell also said that price pressures remain mostly muted and that the economic outlook is still highly uncertain. Certainly not news that we want to hear, right? Especially as investors, we like to hear good news. We like to hear that we have some direction. However, what we're seeing right now is because the pandemic is adding this additional layer of uncertainty in the form of mutations, it's really hard for the government to give us clear direction on their spending and where they're pulling back and if they need to adjust levels in terms of liquidity so that we can plan for inflation. So much uncertainty. This is why we really have to plan ahead. He also added reassurance, though. I do want to share this with you because once again, he said he's committed to using his full range of tools to support the economy and help to ensure that the recovery from this difficult period will be as robust as possible. That's what we want our Fed chairman to say. That is really what we want. In fact, that probably sounds familiar to you because it sounds very familiar to me. We've heard this many times. He also noted that, he actually didn't mention, I should mention what he didn't mention. He didn't mention investors and the stock market's most pressing concern and why the stock market was down so much earlier today, which is the jump that occurred this year of longer duration government bond yields to levels that we haven't seen since pre-pandemic. So those are concerns. Too soon, too quickly, are things going to get much more expensive? I also read some news today that, a lot of car manufacturers, for example, slowed down production because of COVID, right? Because of concerns in manufacturing, of people being too close. And there wasn't that much demand for vehicles because people were just so worried about how they were going to make ends meet, how they're going to pay for the bills. Well, now, because they sold off all the inventory, that was very little inventory, now they're having to come back and make more vehicles, but supply chains have been dramatically impacted from semiconductors that cars need to parts and everything. And that's just one industry. So trickle down to other industries. This is a lot of things that we're still fleshing out because of the pandemic, and we're not even through it yet. Now, on that news, let's talk about some positive news, which is vaccine news. President Joe Biden and his administration today announced that the supply that states are going to be receiving is being increased now to 14.5 million doses of coronavirus vaccine per week, which marks yet another gradual increase in supply. That's certainly news that we like to see. I don't know about you, but my mom actually just got her vaccine. She got the Moderna vaccine. She had some side effects from it, but overall, she's very glad that she got it. Over 500,000 people here in the United States have passed away because of COVID-19. So very, very unfortunate. So there's definitely a lot of, worry and continue to have interest of hoping that more vaccines become available to you in your neighborhood. Now, now the pace of new deaths here in the United States appears to be trending lower, but it's still really high. The Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington actually projected that here in the United States that our death toll could reach up to 616,000. We're already at 500,000 by June 1st. So really, really unfortunate. That's like by the summertime. So on a per capita basis, the U.S. death toll only trails the UK, Czech Republic, Italy, and Portugal. So we're not doing so great. That's one report card that we don't want to be performing so, I guess, poorly on. So after announcing store layoffs, here's some other news on Best Buy. Now, many of you during the pandemic probably or may have bought some things from Best Buy. Well, here's the thing. They've had an uptick, right? A lot of people were buying electronics or buying, I don't know, I think there was like a PlayStation and their Nintendo Switch was a lot of people buying electronics. And obviously for many of you who are working from home, perhaps you had to buy a webcam or something for work, right? Well, they announced today that they plan to pay pandemic-related bonuses to their hourly employees, and they're also going to allow extra pay time for their employees who are receiving the coronavirus vaccine. And I think that's notable because I think this is just one example. We're probably going to see more of this trickle to more companies. In fact, I'm curious to see those of you who are joining us. I see Alina, I see Get It Hair, Modern Mom. All of you, have you heard anything from your employer about COVID, about vaccines, about things like this? Because I do think that this is going to become more of a theme, and we're going to see more of this, especially at the very largest companies where employees needed to continue to go into the workplace in order to continue to do their job function, like what that's going to look like. In fact, I read a study yesterday that said that employers could actually insist that employees be vaccinated before going back to work. So we'll see how that goes. It's a really interesting story. Something I know many of us, actually all of us, have never had to face. What is that going to look like? Will we need to get our vaccination before resuming our position back at the workplace? And is that going to be something that's going to cross the board at certain companies, right? It's a really hot topic, and I think a very uncomfortable discussion, but something I think business owners are going to have to face. In fact, earlier today, I spoke at a mastermind for the pet grooming entrepreneur industry. Really great community. I loved meeting them, and having these discussions, hearing their stories about how the pandemic has impacted their business, right? It's hard. It's really hard. Some of them had to segue into different types of business, maybe selling goods and resources, other types of things within the traditional, obviously it's harder to do some of the things that they do because they can't work from home. Like traditional pet grooming is something that you have to do in person, right? So it's very interesting to see just in one industry, the impact of the pandemic and some of the decisions that they're having to make. Like one of the questions they talked about today that was really interesting is whether or not they should be employing their children, right? And looking for help. What does that look like? So don't know that there's an answer to that, but certainly those are questions that they're asking themselves right now. On other news, I thought many of you would find this very interesting. Did you know that Crocs, those foamy rubbery shoes, Crocs have become the it shoe of the pandemic? That's right. Many of you probably are guilty of this. I certainly have Crocs, but they're mostly just in the backyard, because one of my colleagues had told me, they said, adults shouldn't be wearing Crocs out. Kids, they can get away with it because they're still little. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm sure there's a whole discussion that we could have about the fashion basis of Crocs, but Crocs have become the it shoe because of their consumers are now seeking comfort during this more casual and pandemic lifestyle. So go Crocs. I guess Crocs are really popular. And I actually agree. I think they're super comfortable. Alina says, I am not a crock wearer. Well, Alina, I'm going to tell you, they're great for gardening. But I don't know, Brian Schumann. I know Brian Schumann, you are a big time exercise fiend during this pandemic. Have Crocs come into your rotation of exercise wear? I'm going to guess that the answer is no, only because I've been following some of your journey on social. And I know you're a big Nike fan right now. And Get It Hair, I'm curious to see what you think. And she says, this is great news because I just went to Best Buy and Best Buy was swamped. Good to know. You know, I haven't been in a Best Buy in some time. I will say that their curbside pickup is uber, super, super convenient. And you know, I'm all about the curbside pickup right now. And any company that is good on curbside pickup and has a very efficient process right now is definitely getting my business right now. So, definitely like curbside groceries. Goodness, they're like, I think Instacart is making so much money off my family and I because we go through a lot of avocados. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So the other thing that I want to share with you is this actually came from a discussion that I had with Mike Meeback yesterday on Fox Business. And this is, you know, we've seen this discussion over and over again, but very much right now. And I'm excited to see this conversation happening. And that is with businesses needing to increase their diversity. We got to definitely give some extra love on that one. We love this because businesses are saying that they need to increase diversity in the workplace. The general sense for most companies now is we want to do this as opposed to, does this matter? Right? Many of you are watching are like, of course it matters, but this is definitely the discussion that we're seeing highlighted. And I hope this conversation continues. As someone who comes from the financial industry, let me just tell you, I have been used to for years, if not decades, of lack of diversity. So this is great that this is becoming more of an issue. There's still a lot of work to do, but let's talk about some of the solutions and ways that if you're a business owner or you're part of a company that is interested in increasing diversity, what can they do? Well, let me share with you something. I recently did an interview study with employee resource groups. In fact, those of you who follow me regularly here in our live stream have actually met some of these leaders of several large ERGs. I think we had leaders come from DreamWorks Animation, NBC, Hertz. We had People Magazine on just recently, as well as other companies. And those of you who work at maybe AT&T and Disney, and you know, there's been a lot of ERGs at major companies for a very long time. In fact, most Fortune 500 companies have ERGs. And I'm talking to them, I've learned so much about them. And they said, you know, one of the reasons why companies should have employee resource groups is it helps us come together as communities. For example, there's the Black employees group, there's Asian, there's Latinx, there's Women in Tech, who I'm speaking to very soon as well. The veterans groups, I'm speaking for their groups very soon too. This allows employees to come together and they feel like they have a community, and that way they feel like they have representation. So if you have a company looking to increase diversity, consider creating one. If your company doesn't have one, an employee resource group, because so often an employee might feel like nobody in their department or in their group reflects them. But if they see that there's a group within an organization, they feel an affinity to that group. They can have intimate, honest discussions, concerns, right? And it just helps. It helps build up morale, and it's a really good thing. But one thing that I also learned from this process is it's not only good for the employees, but it's very good for the companies. In fact, they're starting to call these not just employee resource groups, but company resource groups and business building business resource groups, because by being inclusive and embracing diversity is very good business. Now, another thing they talked about was the importance of actively recruiting diverse employee base, not just in senior leadership. You know, I've been hearing this quite a bit from recruiters as well. Every recruiter seems to want to find an African-American CEO right now. And that's important. And there's good to have senior leadership that looks a certain way and as of a certain background, but they're saying it can't just be one single hire. It needs to be translated to all aspects, all departments, all areas of larger companies or even mid-sized companies. I know it's harder to do at smaller companies, but you got to at least try to be mindful and try to increase diversity as much as you can. But in larger companies and medium-sized companies, think about hiring in all different areas. And I'm going to share this with you because, in our company, at one time, it wasn't that long ago. In fact, even now, we're quite diverse now. But, right before the pandemic, we had someone of Latinx background. We obviously had Asian. We had Black employee. We had white employee. We had everybody in a small team of 10 people. So it can be done. And one of the best ways to do that is to proactively look for people who don't look and sound just like you. And we have, we had different people in our organization hire. And when you're mindful that you end up being able to embrace a very good and very diverse background. I mean, we could do it with a team of 10. You definitely can do it if your company is larger. The other thing, another report I read recommended that larger companies should consider opening offices in smaller or lower income communities so that they have a presence and they can hire locally. Because as we know, not everyone can afford to make a starting salary in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, or New York City. In fact, that was one of the discussions that came up one of these interviews that I spoke to. They said, that's great that larger companies want to hire different people for the first time, but let's be honest, how many people can afford to be an intern, right? Or a low income starting off employee working in New York City? Like literally, how could they even afford housing in New York City? Even within subway distance. And they're saying those are the things that sometimes senior management forgets. Or maybe they don't forget, maybe they just have more pressing things that they need to move on to. But these are the conversations we should have. And then we should remind ourselves and our organizations that, this is really important. And if we're going to make change, we're going to see change happen, we have to be very mindful of this. So I'm really excited to be able to share that with you. I think it's really important. I want to thank me back on Fox Business because we actually had a healthy conversation about this yesterday as well. And you know what? This is why it's so beautiful. Today, when I spoke to the group, the pet grooming industry, that was key. Being kind to one another in these financial matters are very bipartisan discussions. Of course, there's going to be things where, certain parties feel strongly about taxes or whatnot. But I think human welfare can be very much a bipartisan subject, and seeing change for the better, like increasing diversity, can be a very strong bipartisan discussion as well. So I'm hoping you agree with me, and I love this. I love Brian Schumann says so. He's saying so true. He says now more than ever. I want to say a huge welcome to Robin Stevens. She says that we need big companies to grow in the heartland to help with economically. Couldn't agree with you more. And then Get It Harris saying tap into opportunity zones. I love that. I'm going to have to Google that to learn more about opportunity zones, but I love that. I think there's so many areas, different parts of the country, different cities, really small cities or even bigger cities where maybe there hasn't been a lot of impact, but we can make a difference. We just have to continue to have these discussions. Marilyn Ruiz is saying Target pickup is amazing. And I think El Pollo Loco has surprising great curbside service. I love this, Marilyn, that you're saying this. I feel like we should actually create a list of companies that are doing a great job with curbside pickup, because I think what I love about this is, irregardless of the pandemic, and we know the pandemic is big time, sort of amplifying the importance of curbside pickup. But myself, as a financial pro, curbside pickup just like rings my bell, because let me tell you why. Because when you're able to plan out your spending before you get to the store, and you can really be mindful and compare what you're ordering online versus what's in your refrigerator, right? So many times we go to the market or we go to Costco and we just buy things because we think we need them. Then we come home like, oh yeah, I already had cauliflower and I bought 2 more cauliflower. But when you're able to do it, right, you can plan ahead. You can plan your grocery shopping online, the comfort of your own home. You save time and you don't overspend. And most importantly, waste is a beautiful, not wasting is a beautiful thing. And it really helps with your own household's, supply chain, but it also helps with everybody else in your community that might need items as well. So I'm really hoping this is a trend that stays with us. I know Instacart and these curbside pickup, there were some options, scattered a bit and back before the pandemic, but I'm hoping every company signs on for this, because I definitely think this is a trend that's very much good for your budget and your household budget. So I love that. I love that. And you know what? Brian Schumann he's loving, he's liking my music. So I feel like I gotta add some music for you.
Now that's
there you go,
next
Brian.
level.
That's what we're doing. We're doing next level stuff. So let me interject real quick too, because I'm gonna give you some Twitter music, because this is really important. Tomorrow, I want to invite you to join our tweet chat. Now, the tweet chat is going to be tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific. If you're joining me on the East Coast, it's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern, because we're being joined by Tom Jago and Rich Perry tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about planting professional seeds and watching your career grow. We're going to be sharing out, a couple dozen, about a dozen questions, I should say. And you can join from wherever you are. You just have to have the Twitter app, whether it be on your computer or on, you can actually join online too. Just join twitter.com. You'll want to follow hashtag Winnie Sun, start at 11 a.m. Pacific, where you probably I jump on around 10, 15 minutes prior, and we'll already start the conversation. And then we're going to throw questions out, and you can answer them and participate. All you need to do to participate is include in your tweet hashtag Winnie Sun at the end, and everybody in the community will actually see. We have people join from all over the globe. From Canada to London to goodness, we have so many different remote countries that I'm going to forget somebody, and from all over the United States. Last week we did go dark, so we didn't have our tweet chat last week, which actually worked out really well, because many of our community members are also based in Texas, so that gave them a little bit of reprieve, because they're dealing with so much already. But we're coming back tomorrow. So if you haven't joined a tweet chat, I definitely want to invite you. I think you're going to enjoy it. And not only that, I think you're going to learn something. I learned something on every single tweet chat. This is going to be a big discussion. These are two really, really well-known leaders in their space, and they're going to be sharing out some of their best practice, their best advice, and our community joins as well, and they share their best experiences. Sometimes they share the best books or podcasts or things or quotes or information or articles that they've learned as well. Let me tell you, if you can join for us, it's only 1 hour. And just join for as long as you can. You don't have to be here for the entire process, but join. I think you're really going to enjoy it. You'll also pick up a lot of great follower friends, and I think you'll come back feeling really good. 2 tips though before you join. If it's your first time joining my tweet chat, 2 things I'd recommend. Number 1, a liquid of your choice. I know I love my ice water here, and I always recommend piping some happy music on the background. Every week I'm like listening something different. I think this week might be a Maroon 5 type of tweet chat. We'll see, but have some music, feel good. I guess you can be in your Crocs if you're not Alina, right? But come join us. I think you're going to love it. It's going to be a great discussion, and it really, really makes you think, and you're going to meet some really kind, smart, really dynamic people. So here we go. You have here our live stream, which streams on 6 different platforms, and now also Modern Mom. Every day that the financial markets are open. Thank you so much for watching, supporting our program, and sharing the show with those that you love and care about. As a reminder, you can find full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Be well, and I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Take care now.